obviously you work in financial services and usually fast-paced, high-performance environment. And when a woman falls pregnant, she can be seen as a deterror of performance or team performance. Do you feel like you were highly supported when you were pregnant?
Honestly, I would say no. It's basically, pregnancy wasn't even a thing because it wasn't even considered. You're still expected to deliver
just have a big tummy, but everything goes on.
Still expected to deliver the same way. You're also very anxious to tell your boss that you have doctor's appointments because you feel like you're at an inconvenience.
Yeah.
So I would say that the support was not there.
But were the policies in place and just not being executed, or there's no policies in place at all?
Well, I mean, obviously there are policies in place that go with what the law says, but I think it's just a matter of you're an inconvenience.
And there's so many people, well, so many women who've been pregnant in corporate. And surely you would think in leadership positions, based on their experience, would be more empathetic and understanding and design policies and process in place to support pregnant women. Or do you think they don't have the power to do so, or everyone is so into self-preservation that they, it's like, yes, okay, you're one of many, but nothing's going to change?
Yeah, I think everyone is just consumed by fast-paced tradition. There's a lack of empathy. That's what I would say. And surprisingly enough, you would expect that it would come from males. It's also mostly actually females who have bared children, also comes from them. So I think it's just that culture of no empathy, fast-paced. Everyone's just consumed by this tradition of deliver, deliver, deliver.
I'm very keen on having this conversation. Can you just follow me in studio so that we can unpack further?
Absolutely.
Gugu, I hear so many people going on about the workplace being toxic. What is this toxicness that you guys are describing?
I think it's just the culture, and obviously depending on the type of industry you're in, just the culture and like we mentioned earlier, the fact that there isn't any empathy, there aren't any things in place to sort of like humanize stuff, you know? It's all about all work. You're just always expected to like deliver. And like mental health is not taken into consideration. Yeah,
do you know, I once went to a talk where they were talking about how the corporate sector or the hierarchy was designed, and it was similar to military, because after World War II, there's a whole lot of men who needed to go and do something with themselves and establish organizations. And hence why you have chief of, right? Because these are military titles, and hierarchy is very important. And also, some structures can be very rigid.
Yes.
And you could see that they support almost like the male more than the female. Do you still feel like maybe that is the key problem, that we've designed organizations that were actually not adjusted to incorporate the female?
Yes, definitely. I think a lot of institutions have been around for a while, and a lot of people heading them are people who are older, and they have like a rigid rigid structure. Those are things that were formed like a long time ago, and times are changing. You know, like you find that other workspaces have like a more flat structure, open door type of structure. That's where a lot of like these new companies have sort of have that open door policy. But a lot of like financial institutions, if I may say, I still have that hierarchy because they have been around for a long time, and a lot of people that are in high positions are older people who are sort of like
maybe out of touch a bit.
Yes, who are out of touch. Yeah.
And what was your experience? So maybe can you give us one or two examples where you felt like this place is just not good for my spirit?
I've had a lot. I think where it actually hit me was, I've always had like, I've always had like good health. I've never had any issues with like my high blood pressure and that sort of thing. And when I was pregnant, it was just so stressful. And I remember when I went for my checkup, I think it was 28 weeks. And my doctor was very alarmed by how high my blood pressure was.
Yeah.
And I had never had issues prior to that. And I remember at that point...
You feel it was the stress from work?
Definitely, because there was a transition happening at that time and there was a lot of process changes and we were expected to deliver, even though there were a lot of politics happening and management was changed, but there was just a lot happening at work. And it affected me so much that I had just gestational hypertension.
So what was affecting you? Was it the pace in which you expected to perform? Or was it the fact that the transition was not handled well? It wasn't putting people in
Basically,
the center
yes. The structure, I mean, the reason for the structure is because things were kind of, I would say, not going as well. But the fact that you are still expected to, you're still expected to sort of like transition and
still perform
and if there's issues with management and if different managers are in and out and there's different processes are constantly changing, you can't even keep up because when a new manager comes, they come up with their own processes and they only last for like 3 months and then another manager comes. So I feel like it got too much.
So in your opinion, when people look at culture, I mean, there's the culture of the organization, the people who are driving the culture. Yes. Do you think the issue with most organization is that no one is guarding whether the culture is enabling culture, or the people that are expected to drive the culture, they're not aligned to the vision of the organization and hence they do their own thing and create subcultures within an organization?
I think for me, I don't know, like mental health is not something that's considered. It's something that it's neglected, and I feel like because there's so much pressure, it's like a ripple effect. Management has pressure. They're expected to perform at this certain rate and they're expected to deliver at a certain rate. And it's like a ripple effect and then they take it out on you. So that sort of like creates that hostile, sort of like toxic environment, yes.
Because I'm assuming you're a millennial, right?
Yeah.
There's a new generation that's entered the workplace. And is the workplace ready, never mind ready for this generation, but have they taken into consideration how millennials work differently and have different expectations? If you look at the generation that is predominantly in power and has the decision-making power in corporate, they're the baby boomers. And they actually are the wealthiest generation of them all. But they are the kids of the silent generation. And the silent generation are the kids who've lived through the war, or their parents were those people who've experienced the war. So that generation is take instructions, do as you're told, I am authority, follow authority until you get to that. Well, we as millennials are extremely different. We want freedom of expression and so forth. Do you think that could possibly be the clash? Because the people who are making the decisions are rigid. They don't understand us. And the people who are wanting the change to be effected don't have the money to make those radical decisions. What's your view on that?
That is very true. I do believe that the rigidness obviously comes from like the older generation. And now that the millennials are coming into the workspace and coming into this very rigid space. I mean, we are the generation of freedom of speech, like you mentioned. So I definitely think that causes a clash in the workspace. We want to be heard. We want to change. We want to change the environment. We want to be able to be content in the workspace. We ask questions.
But the argument boomers always have about us is that we want to come in, we want almost like instant gratification. We want to climb up the corporate ladder very quickly, but we're not patient and we don't want to sit it through and gain the necessary experience. But then somebody else could argue that the workplace is very different to 50 years ago. Yeah. What worked 50 years ago is very different to now. But do you think that the boomers even have what it takes now to run modern organizations?
I would say no.
Mm-hmm. And why do you say so?
There's a lot, like you said, a lot of things have changed. The world is moving digitally. There's just a lot of things that worked 50 years ago that will not work now. And I think because of this transformation, like social media, there's a lot of these things that were not there a long time ago, and how marketing has changed and all that thing and all those things. I think that definitely the world is moving along, and millennials are more like people who would be able to run
the world.
The world, yeah.
And I'm going to bring it now to in the African context. So as an African child, your boomers are probably the ages of your older uncles and your parents, right? And we're taught to respect them. So there's lots of millennials in South Africa who would want to challenge that. But maybe the manner in which we are challenging that, because we're showing respect and we're communicating with them like we would communicate with our elders.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not being heard or not taken seriously because they think that, we don't want it as much as we speak about it.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for other people. I can speak for myself. I've actually realized that in corporates, a lot of African children, African male and females, especially females, they are afraid to voice out what they're actually feeling like. And I've noticed that I've always been the assertive one because that's how I was brought up. My mother always taught me, like, speak your mind, that sort of thing.
You speak out and you're female and you're in corporate.
And I think that's also been an issue for me, You come across as intimidating, you come across as cheeky, disrespectful, and it's like, okay, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? And like I said, like from my experience, I have noticed that a lot of our fellow African employees tend to because you are taught to be grateful for a job.
Yes.
So there's that
and
aspect
actually hit
as well.
Very interesting is that in South Africa, we're still going through our integration issues between the different races and so forth. And some people still have a false sense of superiority in corporate and still see also the Black child as, we did you a favor.
Absolutely.
That's why you're here and you need to be grateful. And do you think that's playing out in what you see in the workplace in terms of a toxic environment?
Yes, I think that actually majority of the issue that we've experienced as Africans stems from there.
Dynamics.
I mean, yes, honestly, it is. Yeah. Yes.
You're speaking of just the people management component. A lot of people have no faith in the HR departments, and I don't know, because is it in South Africa? So in China, for example, the person who's closest to the CEO is often the HR director. And in South Africa, it's usually the accountant, which is the CFO, or the operational guys. And they speak numbers. They don't speak people. Do you think maybe that's the reason why we find that these people issues are not properly addressed in the boardrooms when people are having discussions? Because the people who should be driving this are not given the adequate power to drive this change.
Yeah, that is true. I actually learned the hard way that HR is not really HR. So I do think that a lot of HR role is not...
It's more of so some people feel it's more of an administrative role.
I would agree with that.
Role.
I would agree with that. Like I said, I learned the hard way that it's actually not what it's said to be. It's more as like administrative than anything else. Yeah.
What is it that millennials want? Like, say they want this freedom of expression. What is this freedom of expression? So I'm 39 years old. I get the 90s generation. 2000, I'm like, Nkosiami, what is happening with these people? Like, how do they think? How do they operate? But unfortunately, I've been in a whole lot of meeting rooms in corporate where management says, yes, we are open to accommodating millennials. They say they want freedom, they want all this. What do they want? What is this that they want? Can they describe it?
Well, I think we just want freedom and we want to be heard.
What is freedom? What is freedom in corporate? Can I walk in at 3 a.m. and say, hey, boss, and then go home at 4?
No, like if I were to make an example, right? Like the structure, the rigid structure includes a lot of micromanagement. Like we've seen with COVID now that people can work from home and that sort of thing. And I've seen that some of the corporate institutions are actually like moving towards a more, I would say like chilled environment.
And a flexible
like very
environment.
flexible,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I think if you feel like you're more productive at home, then work from home. You know, that sort of thing.
And
like
give us greater decision-making power.
also
Don't plan my life for me.
absolutely. And yeah, like I said, mental health is very important. And if you feel like you're more comfortable working from home, then if it's something that can happen and it's something that won't obviously disrupt the company, then why not?
And do you think COVID has helped a bit in getting companies to have the right conversations about the things? Because everything that we're seeing now, as much as they say, it's a technological, I don't know, revolution of some sort.
Yeah.
These things have been on white paper suggested to companies for years before COVID. But it seems like COVID forced them to adopt this. So do you think that that was the positive impact of COVID in getting companies to just relook at the way they want to design work structures and say, does it really make sense?
I think definitely. I mean, it makes so much sense. People are more comfortable at home and it actually does work to the company's benefits. Because, I mean, I know for myself, I hardly ever, I'm always on my laptop. You know, like when you're at work, when you shut down your laptop, you leave it in your boot or whatever, and then you just...
And apparently most people, even if they're in the office, are only productive 3 to 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And some people, their productivity levels have actually increased at home
Definitely.
because I log in when I want to, when I'm in the zone, when I want to work, and I'm much more productive. So having said that, what do you think, from your experience, what do you think companies could do better?
Like I said, be able to loosen up and listen to hear what...
You are chief of staff today.
Yes.
What are the 4 things that you would implement immediately that you think that will make the lives of many people better?
I don't know.
Think about it.
I don't know.
Because if you're given the opportunity to go into the boardroom right now and somebody was watching and said, you actually had very valid points. Here's a project. I'm giving you this project. Because the reason why I'm asking you this is that we have a lot of braai and dinner conversations as millennials around this. I don't like work. They don't do this and they don't do that. But it seems like we're not providing a whole lot of solutions. Right? And because we want to design the workplace for us, a workplace that makes sense to us, most likely the solutions are going to come from us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that we need to think about as millennials, to say that we want to effect change. We want the world to accommodate us. We just don't want to be seen as the generation that's just radical and likes to make a noise about everything. We also want to be seen as a generation that's adding value. And we're adding value in many ways, and it's been demonstrated. Great companies have been built by millennials, people who are barely 35 and have done well and changed this world dramatically. But also, whether you're Gen X, you're a baby boomer, or you're sitting at home and you have greater decision-making power in the workplace, you might not understand the struggles of certain people, be it women, be it the millennials, be it a certain race of people. But diversity and understanding where people come from is important in order to build great workspaces. There's a lot of research that's been done. If you're looking for that, go and find an MBA student and they'll give it to you for free. But I hope with that said, you go home and you reflect and you ask yourself, how can I design a better working environment that can allow everyone who's there to feel welcome, to feel heard, and to be able to thrive? I'm Dudu Madonsela. See you next week.